Hi, Thomas. We are very excited to have you with us today.
Hi Nemo, how are you doing?
Very well, very well. Thank you so much for joining in. We are very curious about your background because you are so well connected and so deeply entrenched in ecosystems and building startups and building the venture capital space, corporate innovation space. So I would say, could we start there maybe? Who are you and what are you doing? What all are you doing? I don't know how to better put it forward to you.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Naimul. Always great to join some of your events. Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Bigagli. I'm French Italian who have been passionate about entrepreneurship and innovation since my really young age. And I've been, even doing some entrepreneurship contests when I was less than 20 years old, launched two startups myself, one that I sold and the other one that is still running, and decided to join a plug and play roughly 5 years ago, a bit more than 5 years ago, actually, officially, because I met Plug and Play a year before and was acting as a scout. And I really like their model because, Plug and Play is it's really fostering a startup collaboration, but also backing them thanks to our VC arms. And it's positioning itself as really, a pioneer that is fostering the collaboration of the whole value chain between the different stakeholders, right? So I thought the model was really interesting, and why not trying it out? So I joined Plug and Play in 2018 to, on one side, invest in early stage, highly scalable business model entrepreneurs globally, but on the other side, also support large corporations, governments, consortiums, etc., to boost their digital transformations, mostly by working with startups that we will scout and matchmake on specific pain points that they have shared with us.
Awesome. That's very interesting that you said you use two words like scout and matchmake. How would you say they are different or similar, and what's your core focus in these two words?
We scout startups on a daily basis. Plug and Play
Mm-hmm.
is relatively a big a fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have 850 people globally, roughly a third are working in ventures. So our tech experts and enthusiasts that try to find all of the gold nuggets that are emerging on a daily basis. So big shout out to our ventures teams for that. So we scout on one side for,
Mm-hmm.
investment opportunities, but also, again, for the needs of our corporate partners. In a nutshell, how we do that. So we have globally now a bit more than 600 partners that are mostly large corporations, but they can
Mm-hmm.
also be government institutions, etc. Large corporations, they have an innovation roadmap. Sometimes they don't, and we need to help them. And as soon as they are building these evolutive innovation roadmaps, they need to prioritize some pain points, right? So then we will sit with their different business units that are linked to these pain points, try to dig further into it,
Mm-hmm.
try to also define some scouting criteria that can be, specific TRL, specific tech, or even specific geographical zones. And after having all of this information, we can scout the startups that really answer their pain points, but also their criteria. And we send them a list. They will review it,
Mm-hmm.
and they will select the ones that they think are the most suitable, or the ones they think are the most interesting. And then we start the matchmaking, right? And of course, we will brief the startups beforehand, right? Our goal is also to make sure that this meeting will run smoothly. So we have, let's say, training calls with startups beforehand to tell them, okay, what the corporate partners are expecting from you, what you should emphasize on, etc. Right? To best
Awesome.
prepare them.
But that's a huge number, 600 corporations, and working globally at that scale. I'm very curious in understanding, like, what are the kind of challenges that corporations are trying to resolve when they approach to startups or outside, I would say outside eyes on what they are kind of building in future, if we can go there for a minute.
Yeah, of course. It's going to be hard to answer a question simply because I think, the pain points from one corporation to another may be similar, and sometimes they may be really different. And even when we are solving, let's say, the pain points of similar pain points to two competing large corporations, the criteria might be so different that the startups that we will scout will indeed be also different, right? But some large corporations are really forward thinking, and they want us to scout mostly early stage, really disruptive technologies, while some other ones are more, and I would say the majority of them, they are more on the safe zone, where they want to work more in incremental innovation. And so, they ask us to scout mostly startups that already have a bunch of customer references, right? But then the pain points, again, they can be anything. It can be sometimes for their functions, so how to support their HR team, their finance team, etc. Or sometimes it's their core business, right? It can be digitizing their supply chain or making it more green. It can be also, honestly, I can share 1,000 or more examples with you.
Okay. Awesome. Um, I'm very like I have a follow-up question on that. I'm just thinking if I go there because I also have two questions going back because we directly jump into corporate innovation. But I think let's dig deep into corporate innovation one more point, which is typically when you have scouted a startup, then what happens? Is it that the startup is fused into the corporate infrastructure? Do the corporations take a kind of a partnership method of working with a startup or equity or like fully owning the startup? Like, how does it benefit the most the corporation side, the type of arrangement they have with startups, for example?
Yeah. So, I mean, the added value of working with startups for large corporations, I would say nowadays is pretty much democratized, right? They are all aware that open innovation is needed and that they cannot do everything themselves, and that they should partner with agile, young, innovative companies that could give them a specific edge, and that it's easier and less costly to try out such technologies with startups than rather doing that themselves, right? And if the POC, the trial phase is successful, they can then scale that and potentially then invest or even acquire later on, right?
Okay.
How do we facilitate that? So after, let's say, the matchmaking, the goal is for the large corporations, after meeting, a certain number of startups solving these specific pain points, to request us to organize follow-up meetings, right? These meetings, the goal is to really try to challenge the startups even more, share additional information, and try to scope a potential POC pilot phase, right? Then after they've been, challenging all of these startups, they will pursue generally with one. Sometimes you have corporations that are actually, running similar POCs with different startups to challenge different companies at the same time and pick later on the most successful case. But generally it's one. And our goal, Plug and Play, is to support large corporations, of course, challenging the startups, but also scoping the POC, and then to smooth the collaboration during this trial phase, right? So making sure there is no bottleneck on the startup side and on the large corporation side, right? Because generally, we are working closely with the innovation teams, the strategy team, etc. And the innovation team of large corporations, they are a bridge, right? They are really horizontal. And for them to have the buy-in of certain business units might be a struggle, right? Some business unit, they understand the added value that the startup could bring, but sometimes they see that as, painful. It also costs them a lot of time, and they don't think this will help them reach their own KPIs, right? So there is a big acculturation role that we need to play as well, that generally is really successful. And by smoothing this trial phase through the POC or the pilot project, generally the POC to implementation rate is higher, right? And that's our golden metric, right?
Okay.
So the real golden metrics of Plug and Play is how many of the POCs that we have been facilitating are getting industrialized. Of course, the number of startups scouted is important. The number of meetings is important. The number of POC is important. But the end of the funnel, what matters the most for us and where we will stop then it's the industrialization. And then, of course, if the large corporations are interested in potentially investing or acquiring the startup later on, we could support as well, right? So this is another department, which is the professional investment and M&A services, where we could support large corporations with such initiatives.
Okay. Again, I'm not going back to the main questions, so I'll dig a little bit deeper on this side again, which is if you see it from a startup's perspective, usually, and you're scouting startups. Now, typically, are these startups which have abandoned the VC route themselves and they think that their technology will develop better if they are infused into a corporate relationship? Are they fundamentally any different from general startup ecosystem startups, or is there a particular need which exists on their side which is very well fulfilled when they join the corporate innovation side of scaling their business idea? How does it look on the startup side?
That's a really good question. I think it's a bit hard to standardize my answer because this might differ a lot based on the type of startup that it is, right?
Okay.
But if we take, let's say, a B2B digital startup, right? You cannot really, generally, what I would recommend is that at the end of the day, you need to finance your growth.
Yeah.
And of course, you can work really hard on your technology to develop some unique value propositions that will prevent some competitors to do the same. But if one of your competitors is raising 10 times more money, he can catch up, right? And he can even acquire you later on. So, the startup scene, it's a race, and you need, on top of building a robust technology and a strong solution that answers specific pain points that get a big market, you also need to grow fast to gain market shares, because otherwise your competitors will gain more market shares than you, right?
Got it.
Generally, you have a lot of market shares globally, but it's fine to have a competition. Of course, it's okay. It's actually really good, in my opinion. But you should try to raise the same pace or even faster than the competitors. And if you take the path where you rely exclusively on some of, one or two or three clients max, and you finance your growth thanks to your revenue, it's great. You will have more, let's say, equity for yourself, but the value of your company will be also lower. So if you do the math, it's actually better to raise, give more equity in order to grow faster, and thus increase the valuation of your company. So, of course, you will have less equity, but the value of the equity that you will have is going to be far bigger.
Awesome. And we already have a question here on the chat. I'll request others that you can write the question directly on the chat for the community, and then we can take it and integrate or weave it into the discussion that Thomas and I are having. So Manish has a question which is on how well startup integrates with corporate culture in his experience. Do they get enough flexibility and agility to run their business, or can they get crushed by governance and overheads? At least corporations need to create an independent unit for these startups. Great question, Manish.
Love
Yes.
it. Really, really good question. What I can tell you is, I'm a bit biased simply because that's our job, right? So, the job of Plug and Play is really to support large corporations to get this culture of open innovation and collaborate better with startups, etc., and solve all of these bottlenecks, right? But I'm aware that you have a lot of large corporations that are still struggling, and sometimes you may have some executive committees of a large corporations that believe in innovation. The innovation department is really good, but you may have a big difference from one business unit to another when it comes to the maturity they have on the innovation topics and how well they are prepared to work with startups. So I think it's not only on a corporation level, even though it's really important, but it's also on the business unit level, right? So this is what we tell generally or the innovation teams of large corporations who are working with. At the beginning, we are like, what is important on one side, acculturate the overall organization, and on the other side is to have quick wins. And to have quick wins, they should focus first on the business units that are willing to work with startups so that you can have some great use cases that we can share to the overall organization. And the other business units that were not that keen working with startups, they will realize that, oh, wow, this is interesting. Maybe we should try that out as well, right? Leading by example, I think is always the good path.
Awesome, awesome. I hope, Manish, that was clear. Um, Sticking to the startup discussion that we are having, and then let's move a little bit more on this. You mentioned scouting as a key function, and then how typically does this scouting happen? Is it done at a global or a regional or a vertical or a stage level? Like, we'd like to know a little bit more on that.
Really good question. It's your questions are amazing, but they are quite hard, to structure in my head and to answer in a really concise manner. But what I can tell you is at Plug and Play, we do scout proactively and reactively.
Okay.
What I mean by that is that when we scout proactively, it's, let's say, we are on databases, we are sharing deal flows with investors, we are in touch with all of the different stakeholders of the value chain that get an eye on what's happening to see and to hear and to share interesting companies, right? And this is not only Plug and Play. Most of the stakeholders are doing the same, right? We sit together. This is what is so beautiful in innovation, right? Is everyone is collaborating, sharing. We love that. But on the other side of things, what I meant by reactive scouting is that through our corporate innovation services, large corporations, they will ask us to, again, scout the best technologies, solving a specific pain points, etc. And thus, we will need to scout exclusively for this pain point, right? So the proactive is more generalistic and trying to, scout ourselves on the web or events we are going to, etc. Plus sharing deal flow with the rest of the value chain. And reactively will be more scouting specifically startups that are answering the pain points of one of our partners, for instance.
Okay, and that's an excellent phrase that you mentioned, because when we are developing even startups, we're talking about, are you solving customers' pain points? And let's focus on that word. How, in your experience, how clear are corporations on the pain points? Or do they need help in defining, specifying, like what role you guys play in that, if you play?
Yeah, no, really good question. I think it depends a lot from one business unit to another. Generally, so we prepared some documents that are pretty much standardized that we
Okay.
share over, like a form that they need to fill out where we are asking them key questions and we are challenging them so that we can dig further into the pain points, right? Sometimes this document is not enough, like the information that they provided is poor or just lacking some key data that we need to challenge them further on, right? So it depends a lot, but our goal in any case, if we want to do the most qualitative scouting, we will need to have the answers to all of these questions, right? And generally, so the pain points they know, then the specificities of the companies they are looking for, these they do not know, right? And all of these criteria, we tend to advise them on what typically would make the most of sense.
All right, all right. Great point over there. Let's try to zoom out a little bit on some other topics. And you have worked extensively in the EMEA region. So first of all, we would like to understand, like, how is plug and play structured in the region, and number two, what are some of the challenges or opportunities that you see in this region when it comes to startup and ecosystem building, investing, corporate innovation?
Really good question as well. How plug and play is structured. So as you know, we are a Silicon Valley based company, right? Our story started back in the 90s, and the legal entity and our HQ got launched back in 2006. Our first international office was in 2015, right? Um, and most of them were originally in Europe or in Eastern Asia. How plug and play is divided is in three main geographical zones. So the Americas,
Okay.
EMEA, and APAC. Um, my mandate is EMEA, though the company is US based, so I'm still working closely with the US. But trust me, we have a lot to do already in Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Globally, we have over 50 offices, and in EMEA alone, we have 32. Um,
Wow.
which opportunities I'm seeing in the region? This is a great, great question. I think, it's quite broad, and I always try to be as concise as I can, but it's hard to compare Middle East, Africa, and Europe. It's really hard. The
Okay.
mandates are totally different. Even within Middle East, you have different mandates. Within Africa, you have different mandates with Northern Africa or Egypt, Sub-Saharan, then you have South Africa. Mandates are really different, but you can see key trends of these
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sub-geographical zones that I'm mentioning. If I'm speaking, I guess most of the people dialing in are European, so I will try to dig a bit further in within the European space. I mean, we've seen that in Europe, a lot of public money has been injected in the startup scene.
Mm-hmm.
This has been supporting a lot the tech ecosystem overall. We've seen, countries like France catching up on Germany this
Mm-hmm.
year on capital invested in startups, but number of startups as well. The number of unicorns in France is still lower than Germany, but per capita, it's exactly the same. So, BPI France have been, doing a lot of things. They've been active from giving grant subsidies to acting as a VC, to acting as a PE, to also giving loan to startups, supporting them through a bunch of different programs. And we've seen that this model is, working. And the government needs to play a big role in the
Okay.
startup scene. Now, what I can tell you is that so this year, for instance, for early stage companies, the three hottest topic, and I'm not saying that from my experience, I'm saying that based on stats, because in the state of the European tech, all of the rounds that were below 5 million in 2023, the three hottest topic were AI, sustainability, and health. AI and sustainability are pretty much horizontal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, they are really interesting topic. If you check AI, you have a lot of noise happening at the
Mm-hmm.
moment. I see AI more as a technology layer that can help you solve different
Yeah.
challenges faster. At the end of the day, the good thing about AI, in my opinion, is that it will unlock the potential of deep tech growth. And deep tech,
Yes.
why, in my opinion, is so interesting is because the digital era
Mm.
has been proving to be successful. We've been digital and we've been booming in digital. The pain points you can solve with a purely digital company are great,
Mm.
but they cannot be, they can be impactful. But let's say now we need to look at other challenges, other pain points. And before these, really impactful pain points, no one wanted to work on them because you would rather launch a digital company that is far more scalable.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that AI now is, giving superpower to these deep tech solutions. So I think you have a huge momentum right now of brilliant founders that really want to change the world and work on some pain points that are really untapped and
Mm.
that can have a really positive impact leveraging AI. And this for me, it's really important. And of course, until now, most of the institutions or funds backing these deep tech companies were mostly governments because the go-to market, the rollout plan for deep tech companies is far longer, right? So in order to survive, it has been really hard for these companies. Now, this rollout plan will reduce drastically, in my opinion. So if you ask me what's the hottest topic I would like to look at for next year based on what happened this year, I will tell you exactly that. I think there is a clear momentum in deep tech, and we will see amazing companies emerging in 2024.
Awesome.
I could for hours about all of this, but I
No, no, no,
won't
but this is really good.
keep
We
you on
actually,
that.
I was actually having a talk last night with Ampli Ventures. They run a SaaS fund, and it's very early. They've started their investments, and suddenly, midway during the conversation, the discussion went to new technologies, AI, and everything. So I think what you said here is, I think, about a year ago when AI hit us in a big way. Like, AI has been in operation for more than 10, 20 years, depending on how you call it,
How
like
you see it, yeah, of
algorithms and
course.
all. But the consumer face of AI, like suddenly the AI, if I pick up my phone here, so AI has hit us at a 1 or 2 feet level now, because we it's now at a consumer level. So I think that's the biggest change that happened, which means that the power is reaching the consumers. But I love the 2 points that you made, which is that you consider AI as a technology layer. And I think that's a very, very uh, clear positioning. I tend to agree with that kind of positioning. And the second thing, which you have mentioned, because Europe has been struggling so much with deep tech over the last several years. So AI could be a great catalyst here. But suddenly it also makes me think, because this EU regulation which has come in, there's a lot of like fire on LinkedIn, because some people are completely for it and some people are completely against it. So it's like a polar issue right now on two
I think
poles. Yeah.
this what you said about this EU regulation will be true for open sources, but if you check like for companies like OpenAI, for sure,
Hmm.
it's going to impact them. But if you check companies that are close, like Mistral, for instance,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that are doing the same, but exclusively for corporations, I think this will be really good. Maybe something that I did not mention, and I'm not sure people are aware of that, is that in 2023, the capital invested in Europe
Hmm.
got significant growth, plus 18%,
Hmm.
while all of the rest of the world went down. So the US, China, and the rest of the world, this is how they divided it in the report that I've seen,
Okay.
went down. So from 1 to 7% decrease, while
Hmm.
Europe got 18% increase. And if you check Europe plus China plus the rest of the world combined, they are slightly more than the US on capital
Okay.
investment in tech, which is impressive. So we are still, big way to go. I think Europe was 48 billion capital investment in 2023,
Hmm.
while China was like 40, rest of the world maybe 45, and US was 120. So we
Okay.
still have a bit to catch up,
Yeah.
but we're on a good path, in my opinion.
And in EMEA, for example, you mentioned you have Europe, you have Middle East, and then you have Africa. So Europe, we have discussed. What are the how is the Middle East market, for example, or African market? How are they different from European market when it comes to corporate innovation or venture structure or venture capital structure, for example?
Really good question. I mean, what I can tell you is Africa, surprisingly, is really is quite mature when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
startup collaboration. So there are large corporations. They've been working with startups since quite a long time. They've been digital since also a really long time, and sometimes they were even, in advance,
Okay.
such as mobile payment, for instance. Mobile payment was democratized in most of Africa far before being the
Mm-hmm.
case in Europe. When it comes to startups, I think the main problem might be linked to connectivity.
Yeah.
I see connectivity really linked to also GDP growth overall.
Mm-hmm.
And of
Mm-hmm.
course, they don't have as much infrastructure as we have.
Okay.
So it can be really frustrating for them, in my opinion. But I think they have clear pain points that they want to solve,
Mm-hmm.
linked to health, linked to mobility, linked to finance, insurance, etc. So we have clear verticals that are trendy in Africa since a long time, and where most of the companies are emerging. Bearing in mind that for us as VCs, the power law distribution is even more fragmented in Africa, right? So you know how that works, right? When we put cash in 100 startup,
Mm-hmm.
50% of them won't return 1x of our investment, and maybe one alone will reimburse the 100. In Africa, the parallel distribution is higher, right? So you will have maybe 70 or 80 that won't return. So this is something to keep in mind. But if you can spot the right one, generally your impact is even bigger, right? Because you have so
Okay.
many things about that. I spent myself several months or years in Africa, mostly in Northern Africa. When we launched the Moroccan office, I spent there 6 months during COVID and then came back quite often. So I really enjoyed seeing what was happening out there. When you check Middle East, where I'm currently sitting, actually, I'm currently in Saudi and I was in Abu Dhabi right before. I mean, it's insane what the government has been putting on the table. They have been honestly really amazing, and they've been forward thinker and they want to catch up. And frankly speaking, I mean, I'm really impressed. Every time I go, I see new initiatives. Startups get all the support that they need, etc. The only thing is the drawback of all of that. So what you need to understand, and that's my assumption, is that, and we can compare that to Sweden or France as well, it's more you back young companies with a lot of support and access to cash, less sometime, entrepreneurial they become. Because at the end of the day, and why the US is always first in all of these rankings, is simply because they have this failure culture, but if you want cash, you need to fight for it.
Okay.
While in France or Sweden, they will give you to have VC funding is hard, but to have public funding at early stage is relatively easy. The thing is that, will you spend that? Do you actually, have you been able to fight to receive this funding, and will you use this cash, wisely in order to make something? That's another topic. The problem in Middle East, in my opinion, is that public money is easy and VC funding is easy. So it can be seen sometimes as a bubble where you, as an entrepreneur, you receive cash easily while you are fighting less than, for instance, an American entrepreneur. And secondly, when you raise money, you have access to a lot of family offices or emerging VC funds out there. And because you have access to so much cash, you increase your valuation. And so you are a bubble, and it's hard for you then to raise with international investors that are experts in startup funding, and they've been doing that since decades, and they could help you so much, but they don't want to invest in a company that is overpriced in their opinion. So that's really the drawback of what's happening in the Middle Eastern region, which, is changing. It's really positive, in my opinion, but I think the parallel distribution is going to be quite interesting there as well. But now the market is not mature enough. Let's reevaluate in 5 years. We are investing a lot in the region. Don't get me wrong. You have great talent. You have a lot of pain points, really interesting pain points that we can tackle. The only issue, in my opinion, is how startups can be overvalued generally. And so, limit the interest of international investors.
No, but this is an excellent point. Usually, at some point in our conversations, we have had some conversations before, Thomas, on different platforms like Nutty Ventures, Startup Grind, and we are very thankful that you've been here on all those talks. But usually, when I'm hosting these talks, somewhere in the talk there is some magic line that comes up, and I think what I learned from what you were saying here, and I share that opinion, that if there is too much of soft funding around, the startup will eventually become soft, because startup
Indeed.
needs to be very, very hard. And I've seen that happening even when in Sweden, of course, there's a huge welfare infrastructure which first supports you as an entrepreneur, of course. If you're out of job, no problem. The government will take care of you. There'll be some CSN money, there's some OCASA, there is a lot of things, there are a lot of safety nets around before you. So you don't really land on ground like if you are out. But so there's a safety net for entrepreneurs, but then there is a lot of support available for startups. And sometimes when I've seen startups getting, for example, a Vinova funding or a larger scale funding, they kind of put on these glasses which become project focused and deliverables focused, and they kind of completely forget that why did they create this startup in the first place. Like they were creating something for this revenue engine, and suddenly they are in this reporting period of 2 years for running a pilot, which is just to be reported back. So the entire focus changes. So I love this insight which came out today, although from a different market. But okay, let's go, and thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Um, let's go to Nordics. Although you are in Saudi Arabia, I worked there for a couple of years as well. But let's go to or come to Nordics and tell us what are your plans for the Nordics, and if there are awesome startups and corporations available in this region, how can they benefit from plug and play infrastructure?
Definitely. I mean, Nordics, we have huge ambitions, as you know. We've been opening a bunch of offices already, right? So we have
Okay.
Copenhagen, we have Gothenburg, and we should be opening also Helsinki, Oslo, so and Stockholm as well. And you may ask us why did we open Gothenburg and not Stockholm? It's simply because we were working with Volvo since a
Okay.
long time in the US, and they wanted to have a bigger impact and
Hmm.
set up a big program near their headquarters. So this is why we were in Gothenburg before Stockholm. So ambitions there are really big. On one side, on corporate innovation. So again, spotting some large corporations that will be willing to boost their digital transformations by benefiting from different innovation services that we put on the table, right? Again, these innovation services can be really broad, right? From
Okay.
innovation consultancy to running accelerators on their behalf to do POCs, to trends reports, to CVC as a service, to M&A, to a lot of things, right? Most
Okay.
of our partnerships are tailor-made. And our goal is really, to sit with large corporations and try to understand how we can have an impact and put together some services and team members that could support them
Hmm.
towards this journey. And these services, we are quite return investment focused. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is we always want to show tangible results,
Okay.
because a lot of large corporations, they can see innovation as a marketing tool, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
We are telling them that innovation is far more than marketing. It's the synonym of growth and competitiveness. And even though you have different cycles and paradigm, you need to continuously innovate, and we're here to support you on that one. And also to connect you with your peers globally. I think
Mm.
one of the main strengths of Plug and Play, besides what we do at corporations level, is also how we connect them together and also to the rest of the value chain. When it comes to investment, so investment in the Nordics for us are really hot. We have, as you know, a unicorn there, one of our latest ones, so Einride.
Hmm.
We've been investing also through our supply chain fund later on. So we've been backing them at several rounds
Okay.
over time. And what I can tell you is that we've seen, I mean, I was personally this year at Slush and Tech Barbecue, and I've seen, what's happening in the Nordics, and I know that already. But I tend to say that before the focus was heavily on Sweden, and that now the innovation ecosystem of the Nordics is getting more, let's say, gentrified across a bigger geographical zone, which
Mm.
is really good in my opinion. And so we've seen beautiful success stories in Denmark, in Finland, and in Norway, for instance. So let's keep pushing and try to spot some great entrepreneurs out there that we could support through our open innovation programs, but also through our investment arm.
Awesome. And you talked a little bit about investment arm as well earlier on, but how does your venture capital side? We focus a lot of discussion today on corporate innovation, but how does your venture capital side look like, and how does it work with startups? Do you directly invest in startups? Do they, or do you? Yeah, so let's go there a little bit, and then I'll just check the question here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really good question. I mean, the corporate innovation side and startups support that we
Hmm.
provide through this is not necessarily correlated with our investment arm. And I will tell you why. The first thing is that all of the startups we are scouting or accelerating to our corporate innovation programs, again, they have been scouted, qualified, and selected because they, answer specific pain points,
Okay.
and they match certain criteria that have been defined. The thing is, sometimes these companies, they are great to solve these pain points, but the pain points that they are actually solving, the market of this pain point is too narrow. And we invest in startups that are aiming at minimum $1 billion market, right?
Okay.
So sometimes they are great to solve the needs of the large corporations, but us as a VC doesn't necessarily, correlate. We have the same, sometimes the startups that we are scouting and connecting to large corporations, they are far too mature, right? And us, we tend to prefer investing in early stage. So sometimes as well, the investment thesis is aligned. No? Don't get me wrong, it happens, but it's less than 5% of the time, right?
Okay.
We support startups through corporate innovation far more than we invest. It's like to date, we have 1,400 startups in our portfolio where we've been supporting over 80,000 startups, right?
Okay.
Today. So, I mean, you can do the math, right?
Okay.
To tell you how we invest, so originally Plug and Play, it's a family office, right, of Saïd Hamidi. So it's an evergreen fund where for evergreen funds, the asset under management doesn't really matter. It's more the capital deployment, right? To date, we are deploying roughly 40 to 50 million per annum in 200 plus startups.
Okay.
Mostly pre-seed, seed, pre-series A in anywhere in the world, any industries, preferably B2B, but we have a lot of success stories in B2C, right, as well. So pretty much agnostic, quite generalistic, follower, not lead, deploying again 40 to 50 million in 200 plus startups per annum. But on top of that, since roughly 3-4 years, we've been launching additional funds that are not linked to the family office, but they are still under the Plug and Play umbrella, where we have a bunch of different LPs. So to date, we have 7 funds. The majority are closed and some are still raising. 5 of them are industry specific and 2 of them are generalistic. So the industry specific, the LPs, so the investors in the fund are mostly large corporations or from our network, where the generalistic ones, they are mostly family offices, fund of funds, etc. And we use these 7 funds to double down on our existing portfolio companies, so to do the follow-on, etc., but also invest in missed opportunities. And this is mostly Series A to Series C, right? Okay. But to date, I mean, we've been deploying a lot of cash already through these funds, but again, they are generally relatively new.
Got it. Awesome. We are very close to our closing the talk with all the interesting points that came out with very strong insights from you, Thomas. Always a pleasure talking to you. We'll take these 2 questions, and these 2 are, so let me just see. So both these questions are on scouting. Let's take Annie's question first and then Dennis. Because Annie's question is, how does a company get noticed by scouts? Are there specific types of KPIs that you're looking for?
Really good question. I mean, how they get noticed by scouts. Again, we have a process that we've been putting in place, right? That is working relatively well, I can say, humbly, where, our goal is really, again, to identify the best pain points, to dig further into it, define these criteria in order to be able to scout the best startups. Then how do we share, let's say, this deal flow to large corporations? Simply, we have developed a proprietary tool where we put all of the different informations that will help them to benchmark on which companies they would like to meet, etc. Right? So I'm speaking mostly on corporate innovation now. When it comes to investments or how we get noticed by scouts, I mean, we are sharing deal flows all the time, right, with the rest of the value chain. And, our ventures team is always available to meet new startups, and they scout proactively as well through the different means I was using before, right? And is there anything, are there specific types of KPIs that we are looking at? I I mean, again, it depends if it's for investment or
Mm.
corporate innovations, but yes, definitely we are looking at a bunch of different metrics.
Okay. And then this also goes to the second question, which is like Dennis was interested in knowing that you explained a little bit in your already in the question. How big is your scouting team in each region? How automated is your scouting process? So a little bit on how scouting works. Maybe a
Yeah,
short summary.
so out of 850 employees at Plug and Play, roughly a third are part of the ventures team that are scouting on a daily basis. So just to give you maybe a benchmark, a fund like Partech that got 3 billion under management, there are 150 people, out
Hmm.
of which a third are in ventures, right? Speed Invest, they are 120 people, a third are in ventures, right? So
Okay.
we are relatively big funds, let's say. Again, we are VC on one side and a platform of open innovation services.
Hmm.
But you can imagine that our scouting efforts are relatively big. Then how automated is your scouting process? That's a really good question. So we have been developing this proprietary tool that originally was a database. Now it's far more powerful than that. It's where also our corporate partners can monitor all of their initiatives, let's say, and innovation. Startups who've been scouting, POCs that they are currently running or that have been implemented, etc. Right? When we are working on such scouting exercises for large
Hmm.
corporations, we are monitoring everything there, right? So
Okay.
it's pretty much automatized. Then when it comes to the proper scouting, right?
Hmm.
We already have a database where we can look if
Okay.
we have startups that are already solving these pain points. But again, we don't want to rely exclusively on that because we always want to also keep an eye on what's happening. And in any case, generally, the world is moving quite fast, so you can never rely exclusively on our database. This is also, let's say, I would say the superpower of our ventures team, right?
Awesome, awesome. I think Sarah from Nordic Music Tech had a similar question. I think that is answered now. Sarah, great to see you here attending. But Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today. You're already in Gothenburg and other parts of Nordics. We very much want you to be here in Stockholm as well. So we'll kind of pull you in
Soon.
Stockholm somehow. And I don't know how can that happen with Connect. So we'll have a discussion on how Connect and Plug and Play can work more closely going forward for this ecosystem. Um, so that's
Definitely.
yeah. So that'll be so cool to kind of collaborate and see how these things work forward. But Thomas, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your insights.
Thanks a lot, Naimel. Great event, like always.
Thank you and
Excited for the years to come.
awesome.